Fandom. You have the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. Now before I start my in-depth review of fandom, a little bit of a disclaimer. This video essay is no way, shape, or form bashing on the general idea of fandom. Fans are amazing and are what keeps Hollywood running. Without them, movie franchises or TV series wouldn't exist because there'd be no incentive to carry on with that TV show or movie without a fan base. Moreover, I myself identify as part of the fandom culture. Particularly, I love superhero films and I love interacting with other fans who share those similar interests. And that is what can make fandom so amazing. Fans seeking other communities where ideas and discussions can be shared about their favorite heroes, for instance. But at the same time, there are problems, and I mean serious problems, within fandom that need to be addressed and called out. This tiny section of the fan community casts an enormous shadow over everyone else and paints fandom as a community that has turned against the very thing they love, which of course they haven't. And that is what I will be discussing in this video. The interaction between fans and the creators has always been around since the very first movies were released, where the consumer would watch something and let the people know who made that content know of the displeasure or amusement of it. And this is nothing new. As discussed in this BBC article about fan entitlement, the concept of fandom could be traced back to as early as the 1700s, and even in the 1920s, where fans would write letters to the studios giving their demands about their favorite actor. And now fast forward all the way to the present, that's how Hollywood is pretty much run. A movie or show will be introduced and the critics will then rate it, which will then determine if future movies or seasons are created. And although studios have the final say in what is made and what isn't, to say that the audience doesn't have a say in the matter would be completely inaccurate, because they 100% do. However, this relationship between the directors or even the studios and the audience has changed drastically in the last decade or so. And in most recent years, fandom has become a transformative space that has seen a huge increase in social interaction, where the divide between creators and fans has been somewhat blurred, more in part due to social media. As stated in the same BBC article, the internet, and more specifically social media, has amplified fans' voices, while also breaking down the barriers between them and the artists they love and hate. However, this isn't necessarily a bad progression, at least not entirely. Having a channel for fans who are directly engaged with their favorite creators can be beneficial in many ways. It allows for creators to hear how their work has impacted the community, while also giving fans an opportunity to have their voice heard by the creators, and that can be a really good feeling for the fans. But on the other side, many fans have also utilized this space as a means to make demands, or also saying harmful things to actors and creators because they aren't happy. A lot of this can be attributed to fan expectation and entitlement, where they begin to expect so much out of these films or shows just because they are fans. In this video, I will argue that while fandom allows for a community to share similar interests and ideas, it simultaneously enables a channel for fan theories and expectations to grow, which in turn creates an almost hostile environment rooted in fan entitlement. For this analysis, I will focus in on the type of fandom that predominantly exists in the superhero and sci-fi genre, most notably Marvel, DC, and the Star Wars franchises where these problems mostly exist. I will also discuss the influence that social media plays in fandom, where the fan theories that contribute to ideas like fan entitlement tend to grow. And as I said before, I know the whole culture of fans isn't like this, and it's only a select few. But it's still worth noting the small group that are causing the problems in hopes that things can change. Moreover, I understand it's not a bad thing to dislike a movie or show, and that criticism can actually be good at times in order for growth to occur. And I'm also not saying that fans have to like every movie that is released, because obviously that's not realistic. However, what needs to be understood is that just because you don't like a movie or show doesn't give you the right to act in a way that would bring other people down, because that's not what cinema is about. And I feel like that is something that a portion of the community of fandom, specifically the ones who take it a step too far or feel like they deserve the movie they imagine in their head, need to realize. To begin this analysis, let's look at one of the biggest film franchises that has ever existed and most likely will continue to exist. That's right, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. To say that the MCU has power in Hollywood would be an understatement. Movies alone, Marvel has made $22.56 billion in revenue, with the average revenue for the 23 films being estimated at $980.5 million. The nearest competitor? Star Wars, which is still behind by almost $12 billion. The power Marvel holds is ginormous, and with that power
comes great responsibility.
Yes, exactly, Uncle Ben. Great responsibility. And that's why having a huge franchise means having a huge fan base. And I mean huge. The MCU has introduced society to a whole new level of fandom that spans across the globe. One that is heavily participatory and, quite honestly, a little entitled. These fans are of course allowed to have their own opinion. Many have deep-seated ties to the comics they grew up with as a child and they just want to see their favorite heroes on screen. I get that. However, that's not how it always goes. Studio heads and the creators behind a certain film or project are the ones that ultimately decide on what gets the go-ahead. So when these fans have these crazy expectations for Marvel films, or as of recently, television shows, it is asking for a recipe of disaster because anything less of their expectation is considered bad. A prime example of this is their most recent show, WandaVision, released in January 2021. The show has been hyped up for a long time, with people anticipating a fresh and unique take on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But with this anticipation, fans had expectations and theories on what would happen throughout the show, with most of them revolving around what characters we haven't seen before being introduced into the MCU. And so by each passing episode, theories became more and more strong as people began to question the smallest of details throughout the episodes. For instance,
there you have it. Mephisto is the main villain of WandaVision, and moving forward will be the big bad of Phase 5.
And I'm not bashing on people having fun and coming up with these theories. That's what Marvel fans do, and there's no harm in doing it. They look for those hidden Easter eggs and get excited about what could happen. But that's where the problem lies, and where fans may take it a step too far. And in the process, they show their entitlement as a fan base. Fans were so annoyed that their theories didn't hold up that they took it to social media to voice their complaints. Tweets after tweets about how Marvel played the fan base into thinking something big was going to happen. But in reality, Marvel did absolutely nothing wrong, and they owed the fans nothing as well. And this is where the idea of entitlement comes in. Marvel made a well-made show that focuses on important topics such as dealing with trauma and grief while also discussing the concept of love persevering and what that means. It was definitely a show that, although contained its classic MCU action and style, was also very grounded in underlying themes and messages. However, to many Marvel fans, they didn't care about that stuff and solely focused on if Mephisto or Reed Richards was going to show up. They believed that because they followed for so long and invested so much time in the MCU that their theories had to be correct and true, which although some did, most did not. And so because of that, the response on social media following the final episode was surprisingly mixed. While some people praised the finale, others couldn't help but feel disappointed that their theories didn't hold up, even getting angry at Marvel for supposedly trolling the fanbase with teases. And while they did somewhat do that in some instances, like Paul Bettany hinting at a major character cameo when it turned out just to be him,
I get to work with an actor that I really admire. I get to work with an actor and work with his actor. I get to work with his actor that is a total secret.
It goes back to the notion that Marvel owes fans nothing, and fans should accept that. Now, all in all, most people viewed the show loved it, and it got great reviews, but as I said prior, it's a small portion of the MCU fandom that feels like their opinion is the only right one, and thus feel that if something doesn't go their way as intended, they get upset. And on that topic, fans bashing on TV series because it didn't live up to their expectation isn't anything entirely new either. Back in 2019, following the final season of Game of Thrones, fans created a petition of more than 1 million signatures just to remake the final season with different writers. They felt upset and angry that it didn't match what they had hoped and felt they were entitled to a better season. Of course, they were not entitled to it and the petition wasn't going to stick, but the message was already out there and it did prove one thing. Fans gathering together and making their voice heard had some impact. Although not enough to get it redone, it was definitely enough to get the attention from the media and even the president of programming at HBO, who recognized the fans' passion but said it would never happen. But that begs the question, has there ever been a scenario where fans actually did cause change? The answer is yes. Now I feel every movie fan has already heard about the hashtag release the Snyder Cut, so I won't talk too much about the history behind it. But in short, the hashtag release the Snyder Cut was an online movement made by fans following the release of Justice League in 2017, where after Zack Snyder left for personal reasons, Joss Whedon took over directing duties. And after years and years of fans theorizing whether or not it existed, with even many higher execs saying it didn't exist, it was finally announced on May 20th that it actually did exist, and that the Snyder Cut was going to be released the following year. All of DC fandom rejoiced that their theories and predictions were all true, and that they, the fans, were the sole reason the Snyder Cut was coming to fruition. And for the most part, that is true. Warner Brothers had no plans to release it and denied it many times that it would be shown publicly. Even the director himself believes it wasn't going to happen. But guess what? It has since come out and it was actually better than the original, and we honestly have the fans to thank for that one because it wouldn't have been released without the movement. However, this does give way to an important problem. What fans want, they get. And having that mentality is dangerous in Hollywood. It shows that fans can have the power over studios and they would be willing to bend to the wishes of the fans. This idea was reiterated by comic book editor Heather Antos in a recent NBC News article, where she was worried about how Warner Brothers caved so easily. They essentially caved because of their harassment from fans, and that now it sets a precedent. And fans have recognized this newfound ownership and now feel they are entitled to what happens next. And that is exactly what is happening now, as fans have since started a new movement following the release of the film. Okay, I won't do that again. But the hashtag Restore the Snyderverse is yet another call by fans to implement movies that Zack Snyder has envisioned for the Justice League and beyond. And if it were any other time, I would have said no way that something like this could have happened, but you honestly never know these days, as it seems the voices of fans has come more and more loud. The idea that fan demand can influence how studios or creators can make decisions is becoming increasingly prevalent and also a little scary. And it all stems from the expectation and entitlement that fans perceive that they have.
Rick, have you ever heard the expression, the customer is always right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here I am.
Although I'm sure Warner Brothers cares about fan opinion and perception, making huge film decisions based off of a movement lets people know that this is something that would be okay in the industry moving forward, which it 100% should not be. The idea of keeping fans happy and succumbing to their wants and needs is particularly evident in the Star Wars franchise. Star Wars fans are probably the most passionate fans I've ever witnessed. Yes, Marvel fans are up there, but Star Wars goes all the way back to the 70s, so even though the consistency of films was never really there, the fans have stuck around and have been gaining even more fans as the years go on. It is a strong and powerful fan base, but also one that has been deemed the most toxic. This is most apparent in the last two Star Wars trilogy movies, The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. It's a classic tale of screwing up a movie only to scramble and give everything the fans they wanted in the next one, only to make an even more crappier movie.
Look what you have made.
That's the thing though, The Last Jedi wasn't entirely that bad. But there are those select fans that despise it so much because of the creative choices they made. Yeah, I have my problems with it, but I wasn't raging out in disgust coming out of the theater, as compared to other fans who called it the worst Star Wars movie ever made. The reviews weren't horrible, but the backlash is what got people really talking, with people hurling racist remarks against one of the actresses, causing her to quit social media, while also threatening the director. Things got really ugly. And on a human decency standpoint, no one should ever have to live through stuff like that and get threats at you for just making a movie. And following the release of The Last Jedi, the fandom community was at a low point, all because of the small portion who felt they deserved better. But of course, the studios were worried. They needed to get back fan support and make them happy again because apparently that's all that matters, not supporting the actors and the directors. That sounds about right. Anyway, because they scrambled, they brought back the director of The Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams, and had the most magnificent idea in the whole wide world to undo everything from the previous film and unload a shit ton of fan service in there just to make fans happy. And did it work? It absolutely didn't. Lucasfilm and Disney played it safe and tried giving the fans everything they ever wanted, thinking it would fix the mistakes of the last one, but it only caused for a half-assed storyline and introducing characters that didn't need to be there, all for fan service. Was it a horrible movie? No, it wasn't. But where it had its faults stemmed directly from the choices they made from fan reactions from the previous film, and it just kinda led to a really messy conclusion. It speaks directly to how much fans can influence decisions in Hollywood and why fan entitlement and expectation is very much prevalent and will continue to be moving forward. So at the end of the day, who cares if Star Wars fans weren't happy with episode 89? I wasn't entirely happy about them either, but you don't see me or the rest of the society who saw those films harassing people in charge of those movies in hopes of changing them. Because not only is it wrong, it sets a bad precedent that fans can do whatever the hell they want and get away with it. So, where do we go from here? Well, despite this video being predominantly focused on what is wrong with fandom, there is still so much that is amazing about it. The community and the passion are truly something special, and although at times things get a little dicey, the purpose of fandom is for the sharing of similar interests while participating in things you love. It's meant to bring people together, not tear them apart. And I will reiterate this again. Fans having their voices heard is so important in the entertainment industry, as it allows for an open dialogue between creators and the audience, which is beneficial for both sides. And having constructive criticism or suggestions also harms absolutely nobody, and some directors are even open to discuss with fans on the decisions they make in their films or shows, because art is subjective, and quite honestly, it ultimately just comes down to respect. But at the same time, fans need to understand they aren't the decision makers, and although it may seem like that as of recently, release a Snyder Cut, bullying their way into getting what they want isn't the way to do it. Just because something may not make you happy doesn't mean it gives you the right to demand something to be changed. And most of the time, it's actually on the fans who overly theorize and begin to expect the world that leads to them acting the way that they do. Whether it be from the MCU, DC, or Star Wars franchises, everyone is ultimately on the same team with the common goal: to watch and enjoy our favorite characters on screen. And if you don't like it, so what? The world is still spinning and you will live to see another day. It's not the end of the world that Mephisto didn't show up in WandaVision. But seriously, what is up with that? They were teasing it like the whole show.